All right, we're going to be discussing the mechanics from a front view, and we're just going to concern ourselves with our path or the flow down the mound. So we already got these videos to the top of these guys' leg lifts. Obviously, every pitcher comes down the mound at different rates, different speeds. However, to make these guys flow together, I have changed up their speeds to fit. So what we're going to see is that we got Jerry Jones over here getting that front leg fully extended and really sitting into his delivery. We got Greinke, who's got his knee, which is going to be further back towards second base than his foot is. He's really taking this front knee and kind of curling it back so that his front hip stays closed. And Kirby is going like Jones here with his front leg, but he's keeping it in a more bent position rather than kicking it straight out like Jones. But what we do notice is no matter how these guys load into their back hips, getting down into their legs, engaging their lower halves, what do we notice? We notice where the glove is going. And that's to help them be able to see over their front shoulder. They want to be looking down the barrel of their shoulder, because the longer we can be looking here over this shoulder as we proceed down the mound. Obviously, we've gotten back to center, but look, we're still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that front shoulder. The longer we can do that into our moment of foot strike, bam, bam, we can see front shoulder, and our head is still trying to fight to keep that front, or rather our front shoulder is still fighting to stay above our chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. And when we do that, we can see that the back hip now has been able to come through, exposing the belt buckle to the batter, to our catcher, but preventing, because that front shoulder's fought to stay in so that we continue to look over it. Look what that's done with our chest. It's kept it squared up, squared up, squared up, as that lower half has been able to fire, and there lies our upper lower half separation that we're trying to achieve. And now here comes the most important part. Getting into this position is key for both our power production, our ability to throw the baseball with our body, thus reducing the amount of stress that's going on through our arm during that delivery, and helping ensure, this wasn't the straightest line here, helping ensure our energy continues to flow to the catcher. All right, we can see that head staying there, that head staying there. Kirby's fighting to keep it in there. And you can see he's fighting to keep it in there because it did not go more out there. So we're rotating that back shoulder. We're rotating that back shoulder forward. forward, forward, forward. So that way all of our power can be flung through those fingers, out through that ball, forward. If we watch that again without any interruption, into foot strike, out of foot strike. Everything staying in line with our target. And then noticing as they're getting into release, where are those chin and chests going? To the target. To the target. The angle of our trunk, this mass from our shoulders through our waist, our trunk right now is upright. It's above our hips. In relation to the ground, it's in a 90-degree angle. As we get into release, those trunks in relation to the ground are no longer up here trying to throw the baseball. Instead, in relation to the ground, these trunks of these elite throwers of the baseball, both in terms of command, the best to ever do it, in terms of longevity and success, one of the best to do it, and an upcomer with elite velocity and potential to be an all-star. Every one of their trunks at release went from being up here at foot strike to out here at release, bringing that energy down the mound, but most importantly, towards our target. And that's something that we're able to see even easier and more clearly in the side view videos. All right, so if we kind of take this back once more and we see these arm slots, we'd say, boom. Oops, let me draw a better line than that. Right, we're at a high three-quarter, three-quarter. We are in a same thing, three-quarter, high three-quarter. Same thing here, right? So these are some of your most common arm slots are the three-quarter to high three-quarter arm slot. And then what we'll look at next here are some guys that are in that lower three-quarter tier. So we'll let, we got Luis Hill, Kyle Harrison, and Carl Crawford. All right, so the same thing, moment of that foot strike, we can see that they're still fighting to keep that front shoulder in, keep that front shoulder in, fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and then coming to release and through, we can see how those heads are fighting to stay in. Luis Hill a little bit outside, but we can see through release, bam, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Now it's out, which is no big deal. It's already stable for long enough post-release, bam, that he could do a cartwheel over here if he wanted to after. So fighting to keep that front shoulder in, And by doing that, the shoulders have stayed squared up, and with a good lower half timing and pattern sequencing, we got the back hip to have come forward, exposing that belt buckle to the batter, creating that upper and lower half separation that we're trying to seek in order to achieve higher velocities and minimize the stress that's put on our arm during these high intense and continuous throws. If we then take these guys into their moment of release, we got that same concept that we did earlier, and we can see here's our low 3/4, even getting closer, some would say, to even true sidearm. We have that low 3/4, and we got that 3/4 to low 3/4. But what we can notice is all the same with those different arm slots, but the most common arm slots in our game. All these guys are fitting the same bill in their own unique ways, but these important key points are all very much getting checked off by each, no matter what. All right, now that we've had the opportunity to study and learn from those big leaguers from the front view, we got your guys' front view videos up here. We got them synced up to the point where your guys' front foot hits that ground, that moment of foot strike like we just got done talking about with those big leaguers. We'll play it a second time here, and we'll pause it at that moment that front foot gets into the ground. And that way we can discuss what we're seeing with the body, just like we did with those big leaguers. So here we are at that moment of that front foot hitting the ground. If we go backwards in time to watch how we got there from the tops of our leg lifts, we're going to first note the direction for each of us, right? We got kind of like our toes up against the white line, and we kind of got into the white line. So that dictates what for us is straight to the target. We're wanting to be able to get that front foot down inside that lane and be able to stay closed with our upper body. And what we're going to notice is we have a slight across our body stride, which there's nothing wrong with going slightly across your body. It's just something for you to observe. And we have that same thing over here with maybe a little bit more drastic across the body. And when we stride across our body like this, it's just going to make it a little bit more difficult for this back hip to come through. We can see that your back hip has come through. We can see your back hip is struggling to come through. And it is, one, primarily because we can see this back foot has not rotated. If we look over here, that back foot, how much it has rotated, right? Boom, that back foot is rotating. Then the front foot hits the ground. Both of your guys' back feet are doing very similar things, where it's just kind of the back heel just kind of going up. Your back heel is just kind of going up. And now your front foot is in the ground already. Versus the back foot being able to rotate forward and then the front foot hit the ground. So this lower half here is operating, at least from this front view's perspective, on time and with good direction. What we would say here and here is that the lower body, at least in the back leg, is not operating on time. And because of that, at this point in time, is not in a good position. If, for you two guys, we look at just the front legs, we can notice over here we got the foot and the knee cap pointing towards that target, and we can see your kneecap and foot, kneecap and foot are going into the entrance of the first base dugout. So when our front leg is this closed, it's going to be hard for things to come around. So if our front leg is closed off this drastically, it's going to make it tough for the back leg to be able to rotate forward. We need to be able to get this front knee specifically rotated a little more before the front foot hits the ground. And what we're going to notice as we come out of this foot strike is how much twisting and spinning and moving there is in your guys' knees after this front foot hits the ground, aka while we are trying to throw this baseball. Versus the relative position that this knee is able to stay in during that same point in time. And it's because this knee is in a position already where everything can rotate around it. Your guys' knee makes it tough for things to rotate around it without this having to get readjusted. So that's your guys' lower bodies. Our lower body over here, looking good. Lower body here and here, we're going to want to learn how to get this front leg to rotate more, specifically in your knee area, before the front foot hits the ground. We're also going to want to learn, what it feels like to rotate this back foot to get the back knee and the back hip to go forward, so that way, once we learn what that feels like, we can begin to do it sooner. So that way, it gets rotated more completely by the time the front foot hits the ground. Versus you guys' lower bodies, right? We got the belt buckle right here. Your guys' belt buckle's over to third base dugout. Yours is going into third base on deck circle, so it's getting there. But it's not, bam, all the way over there. By the time your guys' belt buckles get there, it's not till right here and right about here. So it's just that much later after that moment of that foot getting into the ground. If we now focus on the upper halves, what we're going to notice is each of you guys have a slight hunch in your upper body as you're coming out of your leg lift. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just something that you're going to want to make sure we understand that we're doing, so that way things that we do later on in the delivery have the understanding that this has occurred. And what I mean by that is, right now we're in this position, and I'm going to draw this line again when we go to throw. Sorry, I didn't draw that very straight. Boom. And now once that foot gets in the ground, boom. Okay, so we can see two of us went from that hunch, but was able to get back to nice and tall. We were in that hunch, and then we got back to nice and tall. However, over here, we were in that hunch, and we're still hunching slightly, when this front foot hits the ground. So now when we go to throw, it's not going to have as much power, accuracy, and we're adding a lot of stress to make this throw because our body's in a position that says we should be making this throw from down here. The ball coming out of our hand really low, like a second baseman or a shortstop turning two. But we're going to watch as you go to rotate, you're just a low 3/4 slot. And that's because your shoulders are having to get back to up in order to throw. So, again, there's nothing wrong with this hunch as long as we're able to get it back tall by the time that foot gets in the ground. We do that here well, and we do that here well. That's something that we're going to want to think about is being taller for longer. So that way we can get to a taller position when that front foot hits the ground. After that, we will pause it once again at this moment of foot strike. And like we learned with that big league example, at that moment of foot strike, we want to have our chin looking over our shoulder with that glove getting finished up into our chest, ribcage, armpit area. And we can see that we are doing those three things very well over here. We have the chin and the shoulder over here, but we can see that glove has been traveling this way. It's been traveling that way. It's starting to open you up now, right? The glove traveled the same way over here, but it doesn't keep going that way. It comes back in to the body. And we can see that, yes, the glove over here is into the body, and the shoulder is over the chin here, but the front foot isn't quite in. We don't have that weight into the ground yet. And we can see now that that chin is looking over nothing, but the glove is still finished very well. But we can see because that front shoulder is opened, how much that back shoulder now has to come through. So that upper, lower half separation we talked about in those big leaguers is not as much here because your lower half, your waist, is facing almost the same exact direction that your shoulders are. If we were able to have your front foot be in the ground right now, as we can see, it's still not quite there. It's not quite there. And by the time it does get there, we can see the shoulders are open. So let's just say that the front foot was able to get down right here, and that front foot was already in the ground. Boom, you would be in the perfect upper body position. But because those shoulders start to come through early, we now have lost some power, and we are just adding just a little bit of extra stress on the arm because the arm is having to make up for that loss of power that upper lower half separation creates. So less upper lower half separation, the more that the arm has to provide power. The more upper lower half separation, the less the arm has to create the power because the body is creating the power for it. So we can see with these two guys over here, like we talked about, that are able to keep their chin over their shoulder, even though the glove may be coming out or the glove is exactly where we want it to be, because their lower bodies have not rotated to the target. We can't see their belt buckles. So just even though their shoulders are closed off like we want to at foot strike, their hips are also closed off at foot strike. So they also don't have very much upper lower half separation because their belt buckle is facing the same direction as their shoulders are right now. Whereas we saw those big leaguers, shoulders were there and the hips were here. That's the separation. That's where all the power comes from by using the body and not having to use the arm. Excuse me. So we're going to want to learn what that feels like to separate those two halves. We're going to do a lot of movement, stretches, stuff like that to help you guys learn what that's going to feel like to have your lower half go one way and your upper half go the other way. So we'll let that play one more time, all one motion for you guys to see. and then we're going to move on to the next 3. All right, we got you 3 guys up, paired our 2 lefties together, and then the one. Wish we had a third lefty. That'd be sweet, but figured I get one of the cleaner deliveries on the team next to the lefties for you guys to be able to at least have some benefit being paired up with a righty. So what we're gonna do is pause this here at that moment that front foot gets in the ground, so we can talk about the body's positionings like we did with those big leaguers. So let's start with from the top of our leg lifts, okay? And we're gonna see that these hands are coming apart on with your leg coming up. We want that ball to stay in your glove until the leg starts to come down, 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 like we see our other 2 guys on the screen with us. We want to get in sync with our body. If the hand separates that early, we're going to be just kind of having to hang out down there. And now we're just kind of not able to generate power, and we're just going straight forward. So we want to make sure ball stays in glove until the leg starts to go down, until your body starts to really go forward. We don't want to have the leg coming up and the ball coming out be paired and synced up together. Going forward from there, what we looked with the big leaguers was that lane of that glove, staying and keeping us closed for as long as we can, and to help us generate that power, right? So we can see very quickly we come out of that lane, and now we just gotta, like I said, just hold this glove here, straight forward, in a position that's not really helping us create a whole lot of power, leverage, or timing. And the only reason that glove wants to hold is because this ball has to hold. And the reason the ball has to hold goes back to the ball coming out so early and having nowhere else to go but just stay there. So we can see how one thing leads to another thing. As we continue, the next thing we're going to note is we need to engage our entire body to help us throw the baseball. The strongest parts of our body is in our lower half that can propel our body with power, which means we need to engage that lower half. Okay, we need to be able to get this body deep into that back leg. All right, we need to load into our back leg, and we can see over here how we're just like tall, standing, and just kind of step into the target, kind of just playing catch up on top of a mound. All right, we're just kind of stepping and throwing. We need to be able to load into that back leg. Your leg is staying very tall, very straight, and then when it does bend, it's not because you're loading, it's because the knee is going out, and it's going out because this front foot's going out, and your body's just kind of kicking. You're kind of just kicking yourself forward, and that kick forward kind of just takes you forward. Rather than being able to load into our back hip, and then once we load in that back hip, be able to drive that body out. And we know that it's better to be able to drive that body out with the lower body, because the lower body now can produce all that energy for us. So that way our upper body doesn't panic and think, I got to get going to create power because my lower body's not creating it for me. So if I'm going to create any type of power, I better start going now with my shoulders. And we can see the big difference in your guys' position here once your guys' front feet get fully planted in the ground and some of that weight gets bared into that front foot, right? We can see, like we saw with the big leaguers, that chin looking over that shoulder with that glove working its way in. It's a little outside that body over here, right? We could try to work on keeping that shoulder in just a little bit more so that glove is just a little bit tighter to that body, so that these shoulders are just a little bit more closed off than they already are. However, we can see we have very good scapular range of motion where that ball is able to be not just hidden behind us, but even retracted behind us, like some of our more high velocity throwers that also have that good scapular retraction. If we could see that belt buckle, we would know that it's right there. And we know that because the arm's back here, there's no way the shoulders are really that much opened. And the only reason they are open the amount they are is, again, because this glove just gets a little bit swoopy, instead of from here swiveling into the body, like we noticed with those big leaguers. That's why that front shoulder is opened a little bit. It is. It's not because you're trying to yank to create power. That's what's happening over here. Because your lower body isn't getting itself loaded to be able to drive, and instead we're using this front foot just to kick out, kick out, kick us out, kick us out, instead of using that back leg to drive us out, drive us out, drive us out. And because of that, your upper body is like, well, I'm going to take this glove that's pretty much at the same point and same level that we have over here, and I'm going to yank it down. I'm going to yank it down to help bring this back shoulder through. And because of that, you're having to yank this down before that front foot gets into the ground. So now, yeah, you may have visual of that belt buckle going forward, but so is the entire chest. So now you're left with very little power to throw this baseball with, because you're essentially throwing the baseball from here. From here. Just like we can't really hit the baseball hard until your front foot gets into the ground. So if you got a big old leg kick and guys blowing cheddar by you, you're never going to be able to make contact with that ball unless your front foot gets down sooner. Same thing here. We can't throw this baseball with any type of intensity or minimizing stress on the arm by utilizing the body to power it if that front foot does not get down with the upper body still to the side. So we need to really learn how to keep this upper body back and not start its rotation until after this front foot gets fully into the ground. And we also need to learn how to load this back leg and move the body with the back leg, and not relying on this front foot just falling and kicking down, and then just reaching forward, and that then having this glove yank this way be what brings this back hip through. Because yes, we may look visually in a snapshot like we want to be there. This is the position we want to be at, but how we got there, that's not the way we want to. We want to be able to get to that position more like this. That back leg moving the body down the mound. Moving it down the mound. If we then shift our focus to the other lefty, what we're going to notice is as we're coming out of this leg lift, the front foot does a good job of staying closed, right? Front knee does a good job staying closed. Just like we don't want to open early when we hit, we don't want to rotate early when we throw, because then we're going to have no power. But however, the front foot does not rotate. The front knee does not rotate. The front hip does not get rotated. So now you're stuck in the ground having to try to rotate around something that can't be rotated around firmly. The only way you're going to be able to rotate around this front leg is once this knee gets more over here and it's underneath your hip and foot. So we watch as you go to throw, boom, there it goes. Now it's where it needs to be, and the baseball is a millisecond away from being out of your fingers now. So that means as your shoulders rotate, they are forcing your hips to rotate. And the shoulder rotation needs to be the most aggressive, violent, yet stress-free rotation of the entire delivery, the entire throwing process. So when it's time for the shoulders to rotate, if they're having to also rotate everything that's beneath them, they're not going to be able to rotate freely. They're not going to be able to rotate with little stress. They're not going to be able to rotate aggressively. They're going to be all the opposites of that. And that's what's going to kill our velocity. That's what's going to hurt our accuracy. But most importantly is what's going to add all that extra stress onto our arm, where it's going to make sore arms come quicker. It's going to make our velocity dip sooner in the game. It's going to make us only be able to go 2 innings instead of 4. So we're going to want to revisit that front leg rotation drill that we worked on last year with your team. Getting that thing rotated to the target like we see over here, right? You guys are in very similar positions right now with that front leg. But we watch over here and see how that front leg and that front knee rotate, 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 rotate in the ground versus stays the same, stays the same, stays the same, stays the same, right? Boom, boom, stays the same, stays the same. Rotates. All right, and we can see when we're doing this example, because you were using your front leg so much in that just kick it down and swoop it out, kick it down and swoop it out. Now that it's forward, all it's doing is just continuing to go forward. There's no rotation in that front leg, right? So just as much as we're not getting rotation in the front leg over here by keeping it sideways, we're getting no rotation over here in that front leg because it's always forward. Always forward. Versus our righty over here being able to rotate it. Rotate it. Rotate it. And if the lower body is supposed to supply power to the upper body, well, what's the upper body do with power? It rotates it. So that probably means we need to send rotational power up. So that way we could use that for more rotational power out. And when we lose that ability, we minimize our velocity. We add extra stress to the arm to make those throws. 2 things that we do not and cannot have if we want to have a long, successful, healthy career on the mound. So let's go back to the beginning for you guys, and we'll let you guys watch that one more time before we move on to the next group. Uh-oh. Oh, come on now. All right, we got the three of you guys paired up here and synced up to the moment that our front foot gets into the ground. That moment of foot strike, like we talked about with those big leaguers. So what we're going to do here is let you guys see that one time through. And then the second time, we're going to get it paused at that moment that that front foot gets in the ground so we can discuss your guys' deliveries more in detail. All right, so here's that moment that that front foot of ours gets fully into the ground. So we can see we got toe hitting first over here, we got heel hitting first over here, and we got inside part of the foot hitting first over here. And then from there, we all get the foot fully into the ground, into the ground, into the ground, into the ground. What we want to think about is the more smoothly and quickly we can get that full foot in the ground, the better. Okay? Because just like hitting, we can't really rotate that upper body with power until that front foot is firmly into the ground. If you got a big old leg kick and you got some dude throwing cheddar against you and you can't get that front foot down in time, it don't matter how early or hard you swing that bat, rather, you're not going to hit the pitch, right? We got to get that front foot down and then we can swing. So we got to get it down sooner. And for hitting, it's easy to get the front foot down flat because you're starting on flat and you're only striding a little bit on flat. But when you're pitching, you're starting up here where it's flat, but then you're landing down, and not only are you landing down, but you're landing on an angle with your foot. So we just want to continue to learn by experience of being on the mound how to land with a little bit more flatter of a foot to help us be able to have the rest of our delivery be a little bit more on time. Okay? Because one thing we're going to note is with those big league examples, at this moment of that front foot hitting the ground, we call that the foot strike position. We talked about splitting that body into two halves, an upper and a lower half. And we said that we want that lower half to rotate us towards the target. And we can see your guys' back feet all show indications of rotating us forward. Okay, the one thing we can see is a lot of rotation forward, and just the beginning stages of getting things going forward. Okay, but all in all, you guys are showing that ability to get that belt buckle going towards the target. And we're all trying our best with good glove finishes, trying to keep that shin and shoulder in alignment as you get that front foot fully into the ground, fully into the ground, fully in the ground. And what we can notice is when that front foot of your guys' first starts to make contact with the ground, we're in great positions with the upper bodies. But by the time that front foot gets all the way into the ground, we can see how we can now see the REC in recruit on your guys' t-shirts. Where when your guys' front foots were first starting to touch the ground, we can only see like the ITS. And we can only see this quarter of the emblem. And we really have shoulders, chin, and gloves in great spots. So that's why it's a little important with our timing of how we can get that front foot in the ground as smoothly and quickly as possible, because now we're all going to be in great positions to be able to create lots of free power by using our body and not having to rely on our arm. But as we begin to now let that energy go that we stored up, boom, now the foot's in the ground, now it's time to throw. But we don't get all that benefit of that beginning rotation. All of this, yeah, here I come, doesn't actually begin with our throw until now because the foot's in the ground. So that means all that power that we built up and stored here, when your guys' front foot was first hitting the ground is now just like taking a balloon that you haven't tied off yet, and then at the spot you're blowing it, you just pull it wide and you start making it make that high-pitched sound. You're just letting out your power. Boom, and then you stop it, and then you tie your balloon. Yeah, you still got a balloon. It's still going to float, but it's not as big, and it's not going to float for as long because you lost some of that helium. All right, we're trying to keep that in. And we can keep that in by tying our knot sooner. Tying your knot sooner means getting that front foot in the ground sooner. Hope that paints a picture for you guys there. Because going from there, we're doing a lot of good things of trying to keep our head on the target. We can see that glove is staying firmly into our body. All three of us do a pretty good job of trying to get this front leg to get firm for us, right? It would be easier for you, bud, to do that because your body tries to, and then we can see the heel comes off the ground with all this energy, and then the foot gets straight. So we would be able to lock our legs out, meaning this bend in your knee goes straight, bam, bam. So now we can easily rotate around that because we turned ourselves into a flagpole with our legs, and now we can just fly our flags as violently around the flagpoles we want, knowing that the flagpole's never gonna fly out of the ground. But if that flagpole suddenly gets cracked in the middle, boom, see that instability there at the end? Boom, 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 boom. And then our flagpole over here, as it's getting firm, it also breaks, and we have that boom, boom finish where you kind of falling forward, versus the flagpole staying strong the whole time and able to just rotate things around the whole time. A long finish gives a lot of time for the body to slow down. If you're driving a car and you're constantly waiting for the last second to start to brake, you're going to have to brake hard every time. If you're braking hard every time, your brakes are going to get worn out quicker. And unlike a car, we can't just go in and get fresh brakes put on. We're just left with what we have. So by being able to have this good firm front leg, we're able to increase the time that we're able to allow the arm and the lower body to finish healthily rather than it being forced forward and having to get shut down quicker. Shortening our time to slow things down. Now, am I saying I want you guys to have that leg come all the way over here like this? No, but if you can and your head can stay on the target the whole time, heck yeah. Most guys can't do that at your age. So for both of you guys, specifically over here, if we can get that front foot a little bit straighter, that's going to help you be able to lock this leg out because your body wants to do it here. It wants to do it here, but then it's like, uh-oh, I'm going over here, and then you got to brace yourself because of that. So if your front foot was already here, as that front leg was doing that movement that it wants to do for you, it would be able to continue to do it for you. And then you would be able to finish around more like we do over here. And then if we could just find a way over here, what's going to help you be able to keep this front leg continue to lock out like your leg wants to as well, is just noticing that as you go to throw, see how these guys' chins are really reaching forward towards that target? And then we're going to see how that takes them down with their throws a lot easier. And because your throws don't take you down as much, you're just going to keep going forward where the throw went. So if we can bring this shoulder down more, not just around more, but down more, that's also going to help you with a good clean finish. But all in all, this group here does a lot of things pretty well. One thing I forgot to note is if we look at our two examples over here, one thing that both of these guys are going to do a very good job of as they're coming out of their leg lifts is loading all their body's weight into their back hip boom. See how that back knee of theirs is really dropping down? And it's not just dropping down in place. They are able to go and get themselves going forward. And just how low they're able to get into that back leg. Everyone's going to have a different depth that they want to get to, but I'm willing to bet your depth probably is lower than that. And what I like to tell guys is I want you to think about, you're about to jump as high as you possibly can. How low would you bend your knees when you're trying to do that jump? And that's probably the bend that you're going to want to get to as you're doing this. Because although we're not jumping up, we are exploding out. So we're going to want to engage all those leg muscles in a similar way that we would be engaging a jump up, a vertical jump. It's just happening in a very different way, but the same muscles are engaged in very similar ways. So if you would only bend your knees that much before you would go try to jump as high as you could, then there's no need to get lower. But I'm willing to bet you would probably want to load your legs more, and that's going to help you be able to create more power with your lower body to supply more power to your upper body. You guys all do a good job with good leg lift heights. Good jobs getting those front legs rotated to the target, keeping head on the target. Good finishes. Just those slight little things that if we start to tweak, that's going to take our performance to the next level. Oh, one more thing I did forget to mention over here as well. If we watch, we want a good aggressive leg lift like you're doing, but if we notice, and let's just get this front foot out of the way for a little bit. If we go here, we can even zoom in here for you real quick. If we watch your back heel here during your leg lift, notice how you're going up onto your tippy toes. This is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it is a unique thing. There's only a couple big leaguers I can think off the top of my head, like UC Kikuchi, who used to pitch for the Blue Jays. I'm not sure where he's at anymore. He actually does that in his delivery. But just something for you to think about. If you aren't aware that you are doing it, you can now become aware of it. And as you become aware of it, if you like how it feels, you can continue to do it. But if it's something that you are realizing you don't like, or you're looking to have a way to maybe change your lower body and you want to just think about being more connected to the ground for longer, that would be something you can do. But by no means am I saying don't do it. It's just something for you to become aware that you are doing that not many people do. The next thing I want you guys to think about is when we throw, you guys do a good job, like I said, with your rotations. I want you guys to understand now as well, because we're up on this mound, that we need to throw this back shoulder down more as we rotate around, down more. What I like to think about is this logo or the emblem or whatever is across your guys' chest is trying to get unrecognizable. You can't see it from the catcher's point of view, the hitter's point of view, after the ball gets released. So after the ball gets released, we want to think about, here comes the pitch, we're throwing, and now I can still see it, still here, right? I want you to think that these shoulders go down more, so that way for a moment I can't see it before you then come back up. We're elevated on this surface, we're releasing the ball above our head by a good at least 6-8 inches probably. And this mound is a foot up off the ground. So that means even if you're just 5 foot tall, you're actually 6 foot tall on the mound. You're releasing the ball at 6'6". Let's get the ball down to the 18 inches off the ground at that bottom part of that strike zone. Right? It's going to be tough to do that in a short distance of space unless we are throwing it down. And we can see a lot of your guys' throws are just kind of going out, out, out. It's going to be easier to go down if we're thinking, throw this shoulder down, throw this shoulder down, throw this shoulder down. And that's going to help you guys create more power, more spin, and more movement with your pitches.